Zwei Blue Cards. Von Storch, Korwin Mikke.
Ich habe jetzt hier zwei Blue Cards.
Two blue cards for you. For one from a colleague that's got speaking time in debate. So I'll give Mr. Korwin Mikke the possibility of asking a blue card question. Mr. Korwin Mikke.
Thank you. We accept, I understand, that women and men have equal skills and talent. Unfortunately, when I am looking at TV, there is a program, Extreme Sports, and there are no women. In all the extreme sports, there are no women. I think you should demand that there will be at least 40% of women jumping on the motorcycles and so on. And moreover, there is a list of 100 best chess players. We should demand that at least 40% of the best chess players should be women. And of course, if necessary, we should change the rules of chess, because
Could you please ask a question?
To have at least 40% of women on the list of best chess players. Thank you very much. What do you think about it?
Frau Kollegin.
Madam.
I have to admit that I did not really understand what your question was, but however, if you try to refer to women maybe being less talented in chess than men, then I simply have to say that you are not right.
Für die Linksfraktion spricht jetzt für...
On behalf of GUE/NGL, I'll give the floor to Mrs. Björk.
Först och främst skulle jag tacka rapportören, Miss Noyes, och de andra kollegorna i jämställdhetsutskottet för arbetet tillsammans.
President, Commissioners, I'd like to thank colleagues in the committee for the good cooperation. For the GUE/NGL, gender equality is essential for building the kind of society we want to live in. A fair society based on democracy and gender equality, essentially, because otherwise it's not a real democracy. Now, colleagues, we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of years of patriarchy, and that's shaped our society. And the possibility of gender equality shouldn't remain a dream. The women must insist on their rights: right to work, right to inherit, a right to contraceptives and so forth. So I'd like to thank everybody who's worked on this report, but we've got to keep working at it, and one has to wonder at the kind of resistance that we see. Now, not everyone is a feminist, but everyone is, it would seem, committed to developing a fairer society where everybody's got the same rights and obligations. And in future, we must work hard to ensure that women can enjoy economic independence. We must campaign against threat or threats of violence. And we campaign for a society where girls have more freedom. And we want a society where women know they've got the right to their own body and their own sexuality. And that's something that's got to happen out there in reality, not just on paper. Women don't want to live in a Europe of old men. We want progress to be made. And that's why this strategy is most welcome. The whole question of women on boards, what we have is not enough. Tomorrow we're adopting a report which is probably not enough, but it does move forward. There is a holistic approach, and therefore we must support it. And now, colleague, this isn't just about subsidiarity, but it's about whether you're in favor of women's rights or do you want to keep going with the patriarchal model. Tomorrow we'll be voting in favor of the resolution. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank. I have a blue card for you. We just don't know exactly. Madame Bourse, is that right? Okay, wait a second. Do you accept the blue card? Please.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, colleague. Thank you. You just quote feminism. You were just talking about feminism then, and discrimination. I just would like your opinion, please. If a gentleman, a male MEP, had stood up in this Parliament and said that men do not want to live in a Europe of old women, what would the feminists have said amongst us? I'm sure there'd be uproar, but that is just what you have said, and I personally find that equally offensive. I think discrimination has to work both ways, and as a feminist you can't stand there and make statements like that without then having the contrary backing it up. So to my mind, to say that women don't want to live in a Europe full of old men is just the same as a man standing up and saying a man doesn't want to live in a Europe full of old women.
Colleague, can I say this once and for all? I mean, we get many questions from the EFDD group. I'm happy to admit all of them. But they are supposed to be questions. What is the reality in your mind or not is not the question. The question is to be asked to the previous speaker in a precise and short manner so that she can answer. So please, do answer the non-question.
Thank you. In an equal society, I wouldn't dream of calling anyone anything. But in this society, I have been fighting for women's and girls' equal rights long enough, and I have met a lot of resistance, and believe me, that resistance is mainly from older men. And in this chamber, it's even more true. So I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not having it anymore. And I can name something for what it is. We see a lot of male resistance to gender equality in this room, and it has to stop. I want equality also in this chamber, by the way. Quote us tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nächste Rednerin für die...
The next speaker on behalf of the Greens is Terry Reintke.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, dear Commissioner, gender equality is not just the cherry on the cake of democracy. It is the very fundament of democracy and a founding principle of the European Union. Without full access for women to economic independence, without equal representation of women in our decision-making structures, without women having power over their own bodies, we will not reach full equality. The European Parliament cannot just claim this. We need to act and to propose legislation to really implement this equality, including basic rights such as sexual and reproductive rights. When we say my body, my choice, this statement means much more than just deciding over our reproductive organs. This statement means an empowerment to all women reclaiming the power over their own bodies, reclaiming a power and a right that we hold, but that has been taken away from us in the last hundreds of years. A right that is so simple and so clear that it makes me sad that we still have to fight for it today. And to the right side of this Parliament, it is simply untrue to constantly claim that asking for sexual and reproductive rights is promoting abortions. The exact opposite is true. Asking for sexual and reproductive rights means giving women back the power over their own bodies. It means fighting against the fact that still today, each year, 68,000 women die in unsafe and illegalized abortions. And I tell you here and now, if you want to fight against abortions, do not fight us. Do not fight the ones that are asking to have control over their bodies. Fight for empowerment of women. Fight for sexual education. Fight for free access to contraception. Fight for a society where women can take choices. Fight for sexual and reproductive rights. Because abortions are much more frequent, especially in illegalized and unsafe surroundings, in countries with very restrictive laws on abortion, where women do not hold the rights over their own body and where they do not have access to contraception. So, dear colleagues, please vote in favor of the initial report that has been proposed by Madame Neuchel and empower women to have a right over their own body. And when we are talking about women, we need to see the whole picture. Without acknowledging the diversity of our struggles, we will never reach full emancipation. Lesbian women, women of color, trans women, women with disabilities, poor women, young and old women, all their needs and demands have to be reflected in this joint strategy for gender equality post-2015. And yes, we will also need male allies, because this struggle is not only the cherry on the cake, as I said. It is a struggle that will change our whole society for all of us and that will make our societies more just, more inclusive and more resilient. So, if we want to be successful, we cannot only ask for the cherry on the cake. We can also not only ask to get a bigger part of this cake. We need to fight for the whole bakery. Let's build an equal, inclusive and diverse society. Let's not only make this strategy a cornerstone for women's rights and emancipation, let us go beyond, creating a comprehensive post-2015 strategy that will mainstream our demands in all fields of politics of the European Union.
You will need to answer.
Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. The next speaker for EFTD is Ms. Daniela Aiuto.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, the goal of this report is to put together new strategies for equality between men and women in the European Union post-2015. And if you just look at how thick the report is, it just shows how much work remains to do in various areas. On the one hand, one should support and praise the attention given to issues such as discrimination at work, the wage gap, or the battle against domestic violence, calling once again on the Member States for the umpteenth time to ratify Istanbul. But on the other hand, in the report there are a series of aspects which are rather strange. In fact, what we are seeing here is the umpteenth attempt to arrogantly include issues which are presented as being the jurisdiction of the European Union, but it should remain within the power of the Member States. If you read the title of the report, you expect a certain sort of thing to be in it, measures to promote equality between man and woman. But what you actually find instead is a series of issues which have got very little or nothing to do with that equality. I'd like the Women's Rights Committee's report not to be used to become wish lists which are used then for the interference by one or other lobbies and dealing supposedly with issues such as equality. I'd like in fact to see some kind of education campaign on the question of equality, and to have explicit reference to education and emotional education, if you like, because if a boy grows up with awareness of respect for women, understanding what it means to love a woman properly, they would then be incapable when they grew up to abuse a future companion with psychological or physical violence. In fact, if you read the statistics, in the vast majority of cases, feminicides are carried out by the partner of the woman's concerned. So there are a whole series of positive aspects where we should focus and indeed need to work. One doesn't want to downplay the importance of strategies to try and solve the various problems which are linked to equality rate issues. Thanks very much.
Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Aiuto. We now have Vicky Meyer, 1 minute. She's in the non-attached. Thank you very much, President. I have at least 40 pages of text on equality between men and women, criticisms of the Member States, criticisms regarding maternity, paternity leave, childcare, household tasks, quotas and boards, parliaments, directorships. What on earth is this Parliament doing? This is a discussion that ought to be taking place in the national parliaments. It has no place here. 40 pages of text and there isn't a word about Islam and the implications that that has for equality between men and women, because there is no such thing as equality in the eyes of Islam, and a man is worth much more. A woman can't inherit, for example, in the same way as a man can. So this is an ideology which is an integral part of the European Union's culture, and yet doesn't recognise any sort of equality between men and women, and this is something that we cannot accept in our culture. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Sie haben eine Blue Card von Frau.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bresso has asked for a blue card. Are you prepared to accept it?
U hebt een blauwe kaart. Ja? Accepteert u? Madame.
Grazie Presidente.
Thank you, President. I don't know what you're accusing the EU of. You talked about these 40 pages which highlight problems which have been identified in individual member states failing to respect the general rules.